Hello,
Morning, Ofer.
how are you?
I don't know yet.
Okay, I'm in the coffee mode.
I'm just having my coffee now, trying to get myself woke up enough.
Hey, everybody.
Morning.
How are we all doing today?
Doing.
Hey, man, it's better than the alternative, right?
That's right.
Hello, everybody.
Awesome. Let's see, gonna jump into the chat over here, and just in case anybody needs it, make sure we get the Zoom link. Okay. Alrighty, so let me see here. So I've got, like last time, I was hoping we could get an update from from someone, maybe Leslie or Amy June, or I don't know, Bob, I don't know if you were there, from the Site Builder Subcommittee meeting that happened yesterday. I wasn't able to make it. And then also, I don't know if anyone saw the chat, but I did have a call yesterday with some folks that are helping out with UX design for Automatic Updates initiative, and they are turning their attention towards this initiative, which is really great news. So I want to talk a little bit about that, and then we should be joined by Jillian in the last half of this meeting, and I've given her some information, but she wanted to come in and ask some questions and get some feedback so we can get started on some designs. We can get some feedback from everyone here. But are there other things or topics that we want to or need to bring up today to get on the agenda? Going once, going twice. Okay, if you think of something, let us know.
Andrew,
go ahead.
does Andrew have something to tell us, or?
I do. I always thought that was part of the subcommittee meeting. Hey, everybody. Should we just get started, or Leslie, do you want to start with some of the subcommittee? Because I was unfortunately able to miss it, but I do have an update. So I'd like to let Leslie go first.
Cool.
I think Leslie's having some difficulties connecting to audio.
Well, for efficiency, then why don't I start, and then I'm happy to get bumped. But hey, everybody, Andrew Olson from Bounteous. I've been the one that's been working on the all modules data. So that's that export, that great script that Chris Wells made, dumping out the 47,000 modules, and I've just been playing with that in a Google Sheet. I'd like to introduce you to John Mack, who's a colleague of mine at Bounteous. He is the data person, along with a handful of others that have been helping guide me. And I have something pretty exciting to show you. based on what we've been able to do in just a little bit amount of time and some next steps. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to John, and I'll go ahead and share my screen, John, and then maybe you can talk to it. Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds good to me. Hi, everyone. I'm John. So I've been working with Andrew on this one. He started sharing the big data set, and we talked through ways that we could visualize it and make it easy for people to explore the data to hopefully help answer some questions and do some analysis. What we've done is created the sheet, worked to sort of explode the data out to make it easier to mine. This is a Google Data Studio report, which is fed dynamically from that Google Sheet. So however often we can update that sheet, we now have a standardized process where we can extract the data from Drupal.org, load it into Google Sheets, transform it, and then display it inside of Google Data Studio. The benefit of Data Studio is that it allows all kinds of interactivity, different types of reports and tabs, and a public viewability that allows anyone to look at it at any time and kind of explore at their own pace without having to worry about breaking the data or understanding any of the underlying parts. So this is a just proof of concept to sort of start pulling together some of the things that Andrew and I talked about. We use that script that he talked about. We load it into Sheets. We work on that. The dashboard here, we created 2 pages to start, Project Explorer and Category Explorer. So you can toggle on any combination of filters to try to understand more about the different projects that are nested within these categories. You can see how many different projects match the combination of filters that Andrew's putting on right now.
It's so cool, man.
This is just a first step, right? So then, talking with Andrew, we said part of the next step will be let's work to prioritize a list of what other visualizations would be helpful for exploration. And ideally, those tables or graphs can help us answer specific questions. We can look at on the Category Explorer, it goes into looking through total projects, how many are under active development, actively maintained, average total usage. There's a really interesting one about average number of categories. So how many, if they're tagged in content, how many other categories do they have? The high numbers there would say, okay, they tagged a lot of different categories because maybe this one category isn't specific enough. Couple of things to play around with to start. This is now that we've got the Data Studio, we're sort of limitless potential. We can just continue to make visualizations and report on that information. And once a week or however often we want to, just pull in the latest data from Drupal.org. We've got this is sort of phase 1 that I talked to with Andrew. Do you want me to bring up the analytics question, Andrew, now? Is that a...
Yeah, just one last thing with the data. So, I'm really excited about being able to, it's just great to not be in that spreadsheet and just see the top 10 based on this and be able to filter and just see what is obsolete. One other thing too, I know there's been a lot of discussion about ecosystems. So we're starting that where the ecosystem is tied to ID. And so what John was able to do really quick, he's done some amazing work with, I have an idea and he kind of gets the data to where it is, but these are all the top ecosystems based on total usage. So I've only tied it to the top 3 names so far, but you can see that this is the ecosystem that has the most usage in Drupal, and then the number of modules that are part of Commerce Core and whatnot. So I think ecosystems can be another explorer here. But like John said, this is pretty exciting. And yeah, I think it's good for us to talk about phase 2 analytics. So go ahead, John, and mention that.
Sure. So this is a sort of a way to slice and dice a static dump of information. As we were talking about it, I brought up to Andrew the possibility of using Google Analytics to do some more in-depth analysis. Basically, the recommendation there would be if we had the opportunity, we could add extra tagging to the current Drupal.org site. We could understand what people are searching for and automatically track searches. That would give us a better insight into how people are using the searches. So which searches lead to more searches, which ones are the ones that convert the fastest or get people from a search to a module. And we can define different areas of conversion to to understand when someone has answered the question or found the thing that they're looking for. It's pretty easy to do once we get usually Google Tag Manager implemented on Drupal.org. There's a great project or module that allows us to do that. And 2 steps, one would be to add this on the current site to sort of give us a look at what's happening now and how people are using it, specifically looking at different searches, what searches aren't being found, how are they using the different categories or things like that. And then in the future, as they roll out the project browser, I recommend some upfront analytics and tagging so that you have this continuous dashboarding and monitoring of what's working and what's not. So I imagine the new project browser will allow us to sort and see things in different ways, but we can sort of start us off with a dashboard to say, this is what we expect to happen, and this is where we can hopefully see improvements.
What I have on the screen right now is Neil Drum posted the top module search queries from the last 5,000 searches. This was in the Slack channel, so I brought this up, and that's what kind of prompted with John. John and team do really great work with analytics and being able, once Google Tag Manager is put in, we can get some amazing results and track over time, which is really powerful. So any questions with what we have on the screen about, I put in the Zoom chat, a share for this Google Data Studio link, and then just to show our work as we go, this is our working spreadsheet that feeds that. Again, John and I are still talking through the process to get the latest data over time, and just make this process efficient if we're finding this data ongoing to be helpful. And then finally, yeah, just this is the search that Neil Drum provided. So I'll pause there. Any questions with what we have?
So we do have Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics on Drupal.org already. In the past, that's been opened up to select community members to have a look around. In the last few months, I've noticed there's a lot of borderline, if not outright, personal identifying information in Google Analytics. I could track an individual person. So before opening that back up, we'd have a contributor agreement, like non-disclosure type of thing. But that's something we could explore, adding more tagging to that.
Great.
We would also recommend removing that from Google Analytics going forward.
We just did an audit of everyone who had access and removed everyone who didn't need access initially. So it's just staff and maybe some board members right now. Tim, your audio isn't coming through. And on the analytics within your own Drupal install, that's always kind of like a bit of a third rail, like tracking within Drupal itself.
Yeah, I think this was the jumpstart, not the module itself inside. It was just to help with insights on the current site. But, sorry to cut you off, but I agree that I think analytics in a module gets a little funny.
Yeah, we do have, Tim could probably talk about this more, but we're looking at doing a telemetry initiative to get some select data you've opted into from your site to Drupal.org, because there's a lot of stuff like, which version of PHP are you running, and like stuff that would help the core maintainers build stuff and make decisions.
Yeah, there's a few things that we could go into there. Let me step back. I think my microphone's working now. So Andrew and John, we could coordinate about the analytics side of things a little bit further, like in a separate thread or private messages or something like that, and figure out how to get that next step of data that we might want. So let's just plan on, if one of you want to give me a ping, we can find a time to do that. But this is super cool. The Data Studio Explorer is awesome, and I think even in its own right should be pretty useful. So yeah, really cool to see.
I think some next steps are, we just want to share our work, share the data, but I think what's going to be really helpful, and we can make some pretty cool graphs if we know what insights we're trying to glean from it. So I think whether everybody just look at this data and come up and share insights, or we have like a working session as the subcommittee to just kind of say, can you tell me this, or what is this kind of telling us? But ultimately, I think this data can lead us to action, either to improve the ecosystem tagging categories or helping project maintainers make better pages. And ultimately, the goal of what this is just better data is going to give us a better search. So Project Browser can look beautiful, it can search, but if the data is not good, and if we don't present like 5 modules and have a person make a decision based on it, then what's the point of doing it, right? So that's kind of where those are the next steps that I see with what we have. And thanks for everybody's time.
I think it's absolutely incredible, and virtual standing ovation over here. I would actually literally stand and clap, but nobody wants to see that. So yes, folks, that are so cool. If I may, what about if we create an issue, put this in there, and maybe we could use that as kind of a asynchronous gathering spot for some feedback? Because I would like, I can tell you right now, one of the first things I did when those links popped up is I cut and pasted and I dropped it into the Drupal channel at Acquia Slack. And I was like, hey, y'all, check this out. Like, this is so cool. So I would love to be able, even outside of like the initiative, to be able to push people and say, hey, go look at this. What else do we need? What else is going to make this better? What kind of searches are you thinking about? So that would be, I think that'd be great.
That's a great next step. I'll take John's notes, these links, and Leslie and Amy June, if you could just hold my hand a little bit about making that issue in the right spot, and then let's just blast the world and say, tell us what you want to find. Is this data not telling you, like let's take it to that next step. So thanks.
So cool. What a lovely present for Wednesday. Awesome. Leslie, it looks like you might have your audio back up, or are we good?
Yeah, we're good. Sorry. I don't know what, Tim and I obviously have the same audio. I had to restart my machine. I hopped on this meeting like 5 times. I did see Amy June speaking at one point, so I don't want to repeat anything that Amy June said. But beyond what Andrew reported there and John, we had talked about different ways to get feedback. Am I repeating what Amy June talked about from trainers and from global? All right, so these are the places that we thought we'd go out to solicit feedback from people who are brand new to Drupal, and then people who are newer to Drupal but have at least built a couple of sites, so they at least have some experience with the trials and tribulations they went through to finding modules. So we talked about talking to trainers, people who do the beginner trainings, which I have done many in the past, but talking to that group of folks to see how they encourage people to go look for modules and whether they feel that's successful or not. So we thought that was a good place to look. Discover Drupal. That was the second thing. I think we mentioned that on the call last week, but the Discover Drupal folks, they're not quite, they just learned HTML and CSS, so they're not quite at the point where we can ask them what are they doing or how would they look for things, since they don't even know what Drupal is yet. But a few weeks down the road, we're going to reach out to that group. Global Training Days, which is another place they typically have an intro to Drupal. Different companies give that. So we were going to look at that. User groups, local meetups. We're going to create a slide to solicit feedback, because a lot of new folks or folks that are newer to Drupal go to those meetups. So that place, and then the event organizers working group, we're going to reach out there and see if they could, during the events, post an issue or just let them know that this group exists so we can get some feedback from that. So those are the places we're looking. We're also going to start creating a model for the listening groups, how we want to run those when we do find these individuals to speak to, how to best approach that. And there'll be issues for these different things. Amy June probably talked about creating the global issue yesterday, the meta issue, sorry. And now I have to go add the issue that you spoke about, Andrew, plus other issues that should be on that meta issue. So that's my job this week, is to do that.
And just to tag on one, excuse me, this is Amy June. One more user group would be WordPress site builders looking to explore Drupal.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
That's a good one.
And anybody that has any other suggestions for us as well, obviously we're welcome to suggestions. But that's basically our update for yesterday.
So I'm wondering, like, so all of that makes total sense. I can't think of anything direct off the top of my head, but I'm curious on the work y'all are doing to create the model for those listening groups. Is that kind of more like a, hey, here's how we approach getting feedback from a specific group? And second part of that would be, do you envision that being specific to the project browser initiative, or kind of more general that could be applied anywhere?
Very specific to the project browser module, because this is a focused initiative. So, easy out of the box, there's other initiatives who are doing more global things. We want to basically look specifically at what we're trying to accomplish here. I had another thought that I just lost. But we haven't yet started those listening groups. So we thought there'd be two different types. One is just tell me about your experience, looking for modules. So it's just open-ended. We don't want to bias anything by asking questions. We also spoke about whether we show Matt's, I know Matt's on the call, Matt's prototype or the prototypes to get feedback. But we thought that also might bias them based on, they'd be more focused on the filtering and what's being brought back versus the general. So we thought maybe make that for people who are a little more experienced, have at least built a couple sites, maybe we show the prototype to them. But we'll also have just the listening where we don't give any bias. We just ask them to give us information and we collect that.
Sure. And hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll start to get some wireframes and UX designs that we can start putting in the mix, because one thing that, because I think there's trying to bring us back to the practical aspect. We do have those two phases. So the first one is, what can we do with what we've got today? And then, but we want to think bigger, right? We want to think about, where does this go and how does that inform Tim and Neil and the work that the DA is doing on, what type of changes might we need to the data model, or what should we track and we're not tracking, like all that stuff. So I love the fact that you guys are just crushing the whole second piece of this thing, that whole phase 2 thing. You guys are just right on top of it. That's
Great.
fantastic.
One other quick thing, you mentioned the UX group and the UX help that I think someone was going to join today, Jillian, to talk about. We thought we could definitely use their expertise in figuring out, we're going to collect all this data, but how are we going to synthesize that? What is helpful to the UX team in terms of taking that information and, working it into their designs and such. So we definitely want to have that UX input in terms of helping us figure out how to collate all the data we're collecting in the best way for implementing in terms of a design and UX.
That's a great idea. We can definitely talk to Jillian about that. And I think they'll be pretty jazzed that you guys are so far ahead on this. That's awesome. Any other updates from the Site Builder Subcommittee? Sounds like a pretty productive meeting yesterday. Alrighty. Well, if that's the case, then seeing as how, please go ahead. Yes, sir.
We could use some more people in that group.
Okay.
There's, especially with the listening sessions that we're going to be doing, we're going to need a lot of manpower to help get those things done, and looking to camps and events and that type of thing also to plug some of those sessions into.
Gotcha. Okay. I think that's a good call out.
And
We can find
Bob,
folks.
to tail onto that, I think having those listening sessions during a contrib day will invite new people to contrib day, and have them feel really good about contributing to the look and feel of Drupal moving forward. It might be really empowering for some new people. And that can be a rinse and repeat. Once we figure out how to do it once, we can take that from camp to camp.
Yeah, and I love the idea of making it easier for folks to contribute without having to necessarily go through the rigmarole of learning how to write code or do a patch or something like that. I mean, this is a great way for people to get back. Highlight that for sure. Thanks, y'all. It's super, super good stuff. And looks like Matt is back from vacation, but apparently he was also working on the migration of the data from D7 to D9. So Matt, you want to give us an update on your side project there?
Yeah, sure. I was lucky enough to get from Acquia a new laptop before vacation with a lot of RAM and a lot of processing power to run these migrations, because this is like, you know, huge database. Right now, as I speak, there's 400% of my processing power is being taken up by MySQL. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, so I did actually set up a new Drupal 9 site to move Drupal.org to, and I have a database dump from Drupal.org. And a lot of things have already been moved over. So just to show you, you know, all of these things are necessary in order to get project data in eventually, but language settings, taxonomy terms, site configuration for various parts of Drupal.org, and then a number of things where I've got to work on some data validation, but field collection structures, you know, filter formats, about 2 million files, which are actually just fake files right now because I didn't want them all, but you need the stub so that Drupal doesn't die. And it's all in anticipation of, after I get the user accounts in, finally getting the module project. So it's a lot of progress. You know, the schema is here for all of the content types. You can see how a lot of the dependency content has come in, like the organizations that you have to reference that support the different projects. And you can see all the fields are in here correctly, et cetera. And I'm just working on data processing, and hopefully in the next week or so, we'll have all the projects into here, and I can push it up to a website where everyone can access it, turn on Drupal's REST APIs, and we can start to actually build against the APIs in that case. So yeah, progress, still more to do. Lots of hiccups with like data corruption and module support and weird entities and that sort of thing, but making progress.
That's really impressive, Matt. I'm quite impressed with what you've managed to accomplish in just a few weeks. So thanks for working on that and all the effort there. And I know we've had some individual conversations about that process. So, you know, keep keeping us in the loop. And I don't know if the latest is pushed up to that GitLab repository or not. We can take a look at some of those things too, wherever it's helpful. So we've also got a group of folks working on some of the like authentication side, and that I know that would ultimately relate to users. So it's probably maybe not necessary to connect those dots right now, but something we should be aware of and look at when you do a user side of this thing. Yeah, super, super cool. Neil, anything to add?
If it makes sense, anywhere where the data seems like it's corrupt, either from being upgraded all the way from Drupal 1 or some other problem, we can look at getting that cleaned up in production, so we're not making the migration overly complicated. So yeah, wherever it makes sense to solve a problem before migrating, we can move on that.
Yeah, that'd be great. So, I mean, just as an example, there's 314,000 URL aliases in the database, and 5 of them are corrupt, but it's really hard to find out which 5. So it's, once I know, I'll tell you, we can clean it upstream.
Yeah, that sounds like a great sort of thing to fix. And we have a few integrity checks to monitor for future data corruption, like field collection isn't perfect in Drupal 7, and that causes some problems.
Yes, that is the biggest problem, but I think we're getting past it.
Yeah.
Still super rad. Excellent. Yeah, let's, for the sake of momentum, Matt, I know you're crazy busy all the time in spite of jumping in to help do this stuff, but yeah, let's stay in touch either asynchronously on Slack or other places and make sure we can help you out with those pieces that you found while you were out on vacay.
Yeah, thank you.
Was it a good vacation, Matt?
Yeah, it was great. It was mostly me just like every 6 hours checking to see how much data had been migrated. It was, it was definitely still a vacation. It's good for that type of thing. So thank you.
Nice. Thanks, man.
Cool. Good stuff.
Appreciate that. Yeah, super helpful. Well, I noticed that Jillian has joined. We've got officially 15 minutes left in the official meeting, so I wanted to turn it over. But before I do, Jillian, just want to give you a heads up that before you joined, we got an update from the Site Builder Subcommittee that they are putting together some different ways to get feedback, especially from site builders, and creating a model for listening groups, how to run those, how do we approach it, kind of these open-ended discussions, but then also maybe some specific feedback sessions for the existing kind of prototype Matt's built, or maybe some of those designs that hopefully we'll see in the next few weeks. And we're hoping that maybe some folks from the UX team would be able to help filter, take some of that feedback and kind of feed it through. So I'll keep you updated as we get some more information, but that's really good news. And then I guess I'll turn it over to you, Jillian. I mean, really what we're hoping for is, I know that you guys have been busy working on the automatic updates initiative and doing some stuff there. You're kind of starting to wrap that up maybe a little bit and coming over to help us a bit. So
Yeah,
I think you've got
absolutely.
most of the information that we've got, but I want to give you some time here.
Oh, thanks, Ron. Well, you know me as a user researcher, I love feedback, so constantly soliciting it. And so if anyone has any feedback for our auto updates issue, now's a good time to go look at it. Thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited to kind of get started on the project browser stuff. We've started taking a look at what users might be looking for, but I wanted to take a moment to talk to all of you and just kind of get an understanding of what could go into a project browser and start to do a little research on what users are looking for out of kind of this browser, almost marketplace like experience that we're looking to build.
Any thoughts, especially from the site builder folks?
Especially since I'm kind of new to Drupal. So I would love to hear from you guys who are the experts on this. What are users looking for? What are they kind of searching for out of modules and things?
I think we got to share some of this data explorer stuff and some of the site builder existing meeting feedback. Probably there might need to be a deep dive because there's a lot of cool stuff that the sort of site builder subcommittee has been doing. Jillian, before you joined, we talked about some of that update. But yeah, I wonder if anybody has some initial things. I know from just recapping what folks have been saying so far, and Leslie can go into this too, a lot of what's been going on is looking at what exists on Drupal.org right now in terms of what metadata is available about modules to help you make those decisions, and whether it's the right metadata and whether it's sorted the right way, and how we might sort of transform how that's used. And then we also have a prototype that Matt built that's functional based on the existing Drupal.org API that lets you browse through projects based on some of that current data. That's something that you all could look at as a start. But I think what we haven't really talked about in too much detail, unless the site builder folks have dug deep into it, is that actual presentation of the user interface once it's there. Like what's the essential questions that each like user of that is asking and trying to answer, and the kind of the minimal data versus too much overwhelming metadata, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to know like what metadata specifically is most important to, especially someone like a new user coming to Drupal who's just looking to, extend their site in some way.
And everyone else is going to hear this again, but I want to say it again for Jillian. It's really important for me and other site builders that we look at it from a site builder perspective instead of a developer perspective, because developers sometimes forget what it's like to be a beginner site builder, because our processes are very different than developer processes. So just to sort of iterate that one more time for you, Jillian. Thank you.
That is perfect. Thank you. I love to hear that.
Yeah, and one thing, Jillian, we've been talking about in the site builder subcommittee are the ways to gather that feedback that you're looking for. But we'd be looking for you and your group to help us synthesize that data into something useful to give to the development team to say, hey, these are the kind of the things that we're looking for. But one thing that's not existing in metadata right now is like a use case. For instance, I'm trying to build an e-commerce site, and maybe it's just a little phrase on what they're trying to do, and then it would give them suggestions for modules that would help with that. That's just one thing. We haven't even done a lot of interviews with folks yet to see what exactly they're looking for, if that would be helpful. But from a somebody who does training, I at least know that people are always asking that. I installed Drupal, now I want to do this. How do I, what do I need? So yeah, we definitely are looking forward to working with you in terms of helping us figure all that out.
I love that. I love to hear you doing interviews too. Thank you. So would you say that categories are really important then, as well as use cases?
Yes and no. We've talked about this on this call and on the site builders calls. Categories are a lot of modules right now are miscategorized, which is what Andrew and the team are looking at in terms of the data. There are some modules that have 50 categories. There are other very important modules that don't have any categories. So yes, that is one thing, if we can get the categories correct. But a user that's a brand new person that's looking at Drupal might not even understand what those categories are. That's why we were looking at maybe something. I think Ron had a better term than use case last week, and it started with an S. I can't recall what it was, but Ron, you had a good term for those. I want to do this particular
Solutions
type
or
of
something,
thing.
I think.
Yeah, it was something. Yeah, solution set or something like that. Ron had. So Jillian, any help with that would be good as well. But yeah, we'd love to have you on the site builder calls. If I can send you a link to the time, and I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, yes, please. I'd love to be there.
Perfect.
Hey,
I like your term.
I'll just go really quick. Andrew here again. In the Zoom chat, I put a good collection of links around the Strategic Initiative project browser. And one link in particular at the very bottom of that page are some of the user stories that Chris put together. And it's a document that Ron pulled together. And the last link is some notes captured at a focus group at Design for Drupal. It wasn't a true listening session focus group, but there's some really good insights in there. And one more, we've had some discussions at the Fox Valley Drupal meetup. Bob Snodgrass and myself are part of that. And those have been some interesting insights. And I 100% agree that having part of the site builder committee would be outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be there. And I have 2 other team members too who have been working with me on the auto updates initiative. And I can bring them along because we love talking to people. I actually have been doing some user research right now, trying to figure out what customers and users find out of like a marketplace style. I know WordPress has one for their plugins and things. And I've been specifically looking at people who do kind of fall into that site builder, maybe low code type people, and marketers specifically too, who are coming to Drupal expecting, that they could just use it since it's free, but then they realize they don't actually have the tools they need or the knowledge that they need to use it. So it's been providing a lot of interesting insights into kind of what people who are looking to start using Drupal might be thinking when they get there. So I hope that can be kind of helpful too. Tuesdays, great. We'll put that on the calendar. Is there any information that like users need to know immediately when they're looking at a module and they're looking to extend their site? Is there something that users need to know other than maybe the name of the module, or is the name important?
Like if we talk about like the most basic things, part of it is how much of this should the browser do for you versus make you make the decision on, right? Like, so we talked very early on about should the browser only show you modules with security team coverage at first, unless you check a box that says, I want non-covered modules. Should the browser only show you projects with full releases, or should you be able to see ones that have still development releases? Should it show you ones that don't have active maintainers? There's all sorts of questions. And probably more basically, does it have a release that's compatible with your version of Drupal? And should it show up? All those things. A lot of those are ones where ideally we can make that decision for the user in most cases, because like you literally can't install something that's not for your version, but maybe there's nuance to that. Maybe the reason you can't install it is because you're on an old version, and if you upgrade, you could get this great new thing, and we don't want to hide that from people. So there's some questions that still need to be thought about.
That could be interesting, especially on that vein, like, oh, you haven't updated from, 7 to 9. So maybe it kind of ties into that auto updates thing where it says, hey, if you go here, you can go and update your site. Yeah, that's
Here's the
fair.
good stuff that you could get. Yeah. I guess for me, I would say, and again, reiterate again, we should pay a lot more attention to the site builders on this and the devs. But I can say that, like, from a advanced site builder dev perspective, the things that I look at are some of those things Tim mentioned, like, does it have security, coverage? Is it active? Is it maintained? Is it stable? I mean, those things won't necessarily, like, if it's a no for some of those, that's not going to necessarily stop me. I mean, my component module I still haven't gotten it through the security process all the way yet, so it's not covered there. But I also look at other things like, the number of current open issues that are bugs for the module, or the number of sites that report using it, which isn't everybody, but it at least gives you a metric. Like, if I pull up a module, I actually got a pull request yesterday for an old module that I had. And I looked at it, and there's currently 7 sites reported using it. And so I'm like, okay, well, I went out and marked it. It's no longer maintained. It's old. So I did the pull request, but that was one of those things that I looked at to see, well, how much time and effort should I put into this? And it's like, oh, well, there's 7 sites. So I'm just going to put some notes here on what a better solution for this is to look at. And but that was a key metric for me. So there's some of those things that can be helpful, I think.
Do you ever look for testimonials from other users, or like the number of testimonials?
I don't think we really store that. I mean, we don't really have testimonials or ratings or anything like that currently. That is something we've kind of talked about, I think, for the phase 2 piece. But let me take a step back and ask everybody else, how does that fit in with what you'd like to see, or what you think people would find useful?
Well, do we even have that reviews?
Yeah, I think right now, I don't think that they really exist, Tim, but from my perspective, we're dealing with a lot of different personas. We've got like Ron or myself, people who've been around for a little bit. Ron's more coder than I am. I'm more of a site builder type. But I think in particular, some of the feedback that I've been hearing from folks is that while we might put this out as a module that goes into core that has configuration already set to do certain things, I think that has to be modifiable. You ought to have the ability to change the default configuration on this thing, so that the person who's actually putting it on their site or their sites knows what they want to see, and they're going to be able to configure this thing. I think that's going to be an important component.
So just wanted to let everybody know we're technically at time. I'm fine going over if anybody else wants to stick around for a few more minutes. And then Amy June has her hand up.
Yeah, I want to go back to the testimonial part. I think there's a lot of metadata that we can capture that sort of, for lack of a better word, like kind of loosey-goosey, that can be captured if we make a project page template and have that be part of the template. Like if they have a testimonial, it's on the project page versus cluttering up a user interface with 1,000 different things that some project people won't have time or don't feel is important enough or add value to their project. So I think really working on those templates like we did for the READMEs, I think would be really valuable. In all sorts of different ways. You know, we had talked about this at the start of when we were first meeting, but those testimonials could really fit in someplace like that.
I love that idea. And really, I think that goes into making it easier. Like I know that I haven't like created tons and tons of modules in my day, but I've created a couple. And sometimes I'm like completely inspired. I just sit down, just write stuff. And then sometimes I'm sitting here looking at a blank screen going, okay, I've got this thing. I want to tell people about it, but great. What do I say? How do I say it? I'm going to go look at some other people's, I'm going to go find my own template, right? I'm going to go find somebody to copy who's already done it. But if we kind of had that nice starting place, I think that's a fantastic idea. That'd be pretty useful.
So that I've been taking a lot of notes, and I'm definitely going to go through some of these links of these focus groups and things and see how I can pull out some useful insights from that.
Some Jillian. Well, we are out of time. It looks like we've got some folks who need to start dropping. Any other last questions, comments, anything else anybody wants to add?
I do notice
Yes.
that some, go ahead.
Rajab, you want to go real quick?
Yes, just a quick one about the testimonial. It's really a nice idea, and usually we do add some extra information in the body sometime. For example, if we have a project called Bootstrap 3 and another one called Bootstrap 4 and another one called Bootstrap 5, based on the Bootstrap version. So when a newbie come to build a new site and he landed on the Bootstrap 3, usually we tell them or her at the top, use the new version, use the Bootstrap 4 or Bootstrap 5. So we don't have a way in Drupal to redirect people to the new project or to the new focused. As you said, Ron, it's like there is another solution, better solution. Stop using this module. There is no way in Drupal to tell the users or the builders about that. We all dump everything in the body mostly.
That's a good point.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, redirection for people landing in the wrong spot is a problem we haven't talked about much. That's a good one to raise for sure.
And Bob, did you have something also you want to add?
Oh, I put it in the chat.
Oh yeah, so if you're in the project browser channel, we put a link in where you can mark your name, and then when I'll go in and add the notes for this meeting, I'll try and add everyone to the meeting credits and things like that. I'll do my best. Helps me out if you're in there.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. Really, really good stuff today. It seems like we're making tons of progress. So thanks for showing up. The only last thing I would say is just kind of going back to what Leslie and Bob were saying earlier. If you can kind of maybe in your own circles spread the word a little bit about the Site Builder initiative, or the subcommittee rather of this initiative, and how kind of looking for folks that can come and help out and do some stuff there. I think it's a great way for folks to contribute, especially if they are in that site builder category. So I think if we all can kind of start organically reaching out to folks and letting them know that that's a good opportunity to give back, I think folks would appreciate it and it'd be great.
Awesome.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, thanks for running the meeting, Ron. Thanks everybody for attending.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.